It was a cold, gray morning when little Ian woke to the sound of raindrops drumming gently against the tin roof. The dim light crept through the cracked window, painting faint patterns on the wall beside his small bed. The air was chilly, and the thin blanket he clutched barely kept him warm. He turned to the other side, expecting to see his father still asleep, but as always the bed was empty. His father, Rafik, had already left for work before the sun had risen. Rafik was a man shaped by hardship and loved two forces that had defined his life. Once a respected schoolteacher, he had lost his job when the school shut down due to lack of funding. Around the same time, his beloved wife, Aisha, fell gravely ill. Despite all his efforts to save her, fate was merciless. She passed away in his arms one stormy night, whispering, "Take care of our son, Rafik. Promise me he will have a better life." That promise became his purpose, his reason to rise every morning, even when his body begged him to rest. Now, Rafik worked as a daily wage laborer at a construction site miles away from their small, broken home. The work was brutal, his hands were cracked, his back often ached, and his heart, weakened by years of strain, beat with pain he never spoke of. But every evening, when he saw Ian's face light up at the sound of his footsteps, it was as though the entire day's exhaustion vanished. Their life was simple but full of quiet love. Rafik would often return home carrying small surprises, a few sweets, a pencil, or a little wooden toy he had carved during his lunch break. To Ian, those moments were magical. He saw his father as the strongest man in the world, never realizing how much pain hid behind that gentle smile. One rainy afternoon, Ian came running home, soaked but thrilled. His eyes sparkled with excitement. "Abba, our school is taking the top students on a trip to Islamabad. Only 5 students are selected. I made the list. Can I go, please?" Rafik's heart froze. The words struck him harder than the cold wind outside. He knew what that meant, an expense he could never afford. "How much does it cost, Beta?" he asked softly, trying to steady his voice. 8,000 rupees. Ian replied eagerly, "It's for the bus, food, and hotel. Everyone's going, Abba. Please say yes." Rafik forced a smile, though his chest tightened painfully. "Of course, my son. You deserve it. We'll manage." That night, after Ian fell asleep clutching his schoolbooks, Rafik sat in the dark, staring at the flickering candle. His mind raced. 8,000 rupees. He barely earned enough to cover rent and food. There was no one he could ask for help, but when he looked at his son's peaceful face, he remembered his wife's dying words, "Promise me he will have a better life." So he made a decision. The next morning, before leaving for work, he sold his only possession of value, his late wife's gold bangle, the last memory he had of her. The shopkeeper offered him barely enough, but Rafik took it without hesitation. He then walked to Ian's school and paid the full amount for the trip. When Ian found out, he hugged his father tightly. "Thank you, Abba. You're the best father in the world." Rafik smiled and brushed his son's hair gently. "No, my son," he whispered under his breath, "you're the reason I keep living." Days passed, and the trip day approached. Ian's excitement was endless. He packed his small bag, full of hope and dreams. But Rafik's health was silently deteriorating. The long hours, heavy lifting, and lack of rest had started to take their toll. His chest pain grew sharper, his breathing shorter, yet he refused to stop working. He needed every rupee for Ian's future. One evening, as he worked late at the site, rain began to pour heavily. The other workers ran for shelter, but Rafik stayed, determined to finish the day's work. He needed the extra pay. As he lifted another sack of cement, his vision blurred. His heart pounded violently in his chest, and within seconds everything went dark. He woke up in a small clinic nearby, surrounded by worried co-workers. The doctor told him sternly, "You can't keep doing this. Your heart is weak, very weak. If you push yourself like this again, it could be fatal." Rafik just nodded. He knew the risk, but he also knew he had no choice. That night he walked home slowly through the rain, his feet heavy, his thoughts heavier. When he opened the door, Ian rushed to him, beaming. "Abba, look, I drew something for you." He handed him a small drawing of father and son holding hands under the sun. Above them, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "My hero." Tears filled Rafik's eyes. He hugged his son tightly, his heart aching not just from illness but from love too deep to express. The next morning Rafik left early as usual. But instead of going straight to work, he made a stop at a tailor's shop. He wanted to surprise Ian by buying him a new shirt for his trip. The tailor showed him a beautiful sky blue one. "It's 500 rupees," the man said. Rafik hesitated for a moment. That was half a day's wage, but he bought it anyway. That day, at the construction site, the sun was blazing. The air was thick with dust. Rafik worked harder than ever, trying to finish early so he could be home to see Ian off for the school trip the next morning. But as he lifted one final load of bricks, his hands trembled, his knees gave way, and his body collapsed to the ground. The world around him faded to silence. By the time his coworkers reached him, it was too late. Rafik's heart had stopped. When the news reached home, Ian couldn't believe it. He ran to the clinic, his small hands trembling, tears blurring his vision. His father lay still, his face peaceful, as if he were merely asleep. In his pocket, Ian found a folded piece of paper and a small packet. The note read, "For my beloved son, so you can shine wherever you go." Inside the packet was the sky blue shirt. Ian fell to his knees, clutching the shirt against his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. That moment shattered him, but it also built something inside him, the fire to live in a way that would make his father proud. Years passed. Ian grew up, driven by the memory of his father's sacrifice. He studied hard, earned scholarships, and eventually became an engineer, the very kind of man who designed the buildings his father once struggled to build with his bare hands. On the day he received his first salary, he visited his father's grave. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the quiet cemetery. He placed the same sky blue shirt, now carefully folded, beside the grave and whispered, "Abba, I made it. You gave me everything, even your life, so I could have mine. I'll never forget your sacrifice." The wind blew softly, carrying his words into the distance. In that moment, Ian felt something he hadn't in years' peace. He smiled through his tears, knowing that somewhere, somehow, his father was smiling too. Rafik's story became one that Ian would tell his own children one day, a story not of tragedy, but of love, faith, and sacrifice, the kind of love that never fades, even when life does. Because a father's love is not measured by what he says, but by what he gives quietly, selflessly, and completely. And though time moves on, some sacrifices remain eternal, etched not in stone, but in the hearts they were made for. Ian never forgot that cold morning, that worn smile, or the sound of rain against the tin roof. But above all, he never forgot his father, the man who gave everything he had so his son could have everything he dreamed of. And that is a sacrifice you'll never forget.